What is going on, and welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley, episode 63. Man, producer Will, we are getting up there. I mean, this is pretty impressive stuff. I remember back when we did episode number 1. Now we're at 63. We have a great show for you today. We have Henry Ong. He is the former senior global marketing manager at Marvel. He spent 5 years there, and then he was a global brand marketing and activation manager at Disney for 7 years. So you're talking about 13 years of experience in some pretty major brands there with Disney and Marvel. He also managed a relationship directly with Netflix when it came to Marvel at his time as well. So I want to get into the streaming world, Disney Plus, theatrical releases, and how the world is changing there. Will, I'm excited to talk to Henry.
Yeah, I think he has a deep knowledge of the streaming world, movies and television, and the marketing that goes into that, whether it comes to show releases, tying in characters, handles for different shows, all that kind of stuff that he's an expert in. So excited for that.
All right, so we told our listeners a couple shows ago that we're just not going to do sports numbers for the next 20 or so shows because it really didn't give us any value. So we're going to move to celebrities who are the age of the episode. So it's 63. I know Will is typing the Google celebrities that are 63yearsold.com.
Yeah, shout out to thefamouspeople.com for making this easy. I'm going to make it an executive decision here.
No, you need to give me a list.
All right, I'm going to give you a list, but I might make it an executive decision. All right, here's the list for 63. Ice-T, Melanie Griffith, Ellen DeGeneres, obviously, Steve Buscemi, Hans Zimmer,
okay,
Stephen Fry, Fran Drescher, Dolph Lundgren, and Spike Lee.
It's between two. What do you think the two ones in my mind are?
Well, I was going to tell you there was a clear... I think Spike's on your list for sure.
Yep, Spike is one of them. What's my second?
Buscemi?
Ice-T.
Oh, wow.
Again, I want to go Spike, but that would be too sports heavy. We're trying to get away from it at least for a couple shows here. So this is the Ice-T podcast.
I just want to be on the record. I was going to go with Hans Zimmer. The man has scored some of the best movies.
Isn't Ice-T on, what is he on, NYPD Blue or what's one of those cop shows?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, what Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, and Ice-T have done from what they used to rap about and what they were known for to now, I mean, just becoming just global sensations. I mean, just on film, on TV, like I guess the rebrand of those celebrities are one of the most impressive things I've seen. I'll just put that out there. All right.
A lot of people think Ice-T is just an actor.
Yeah, exactly. That is just not the case. All right, so episode 63, we're looking so forward to talk to Henry Ong, the former senior global marketing manager at Marvel and the global marketing manager at Disney. This should be a fun one. Here we go. All right, he is the former senior global marketing manager over at Marvel, spent a ton of time over at Disney as well. I'm pleased to be joined by Henry Ong. Henry, what's going on, man? Thanks so much for the time.
Things are good. I appreciate you taking the time and having me on board on your podcast.
Of course. I really am excited about this show because I want to dive into you spent 7 years at Disney, 5 at Marvel, both on the global brand marketing side. Can you just walk through a little bit, 10,000 foot view of, I guess, your career at those two spots in particular? Because I know we're going to dive more into those two places in particular.
Yeah, not a problem. So at Marvel, I led television marketing for shows on Netflix and ABC, worked with integrated marketing across Marvel and the Walt Disney Company, and also handled special projects as well. So panels at San Diego Comic-Con, so on and so forth. Before that, I was at Disney, helped crafting product strategies for films from Pixar Animation Studios and Disney Animation Studios. So if you bought an Anna and Elsa doll, if you bought a Baymax plush, I had my fingerprints on that.
That's awesome, man. All right, so I have a lot of questions for you because I know you lived in this space and I know you kind of eat, live, and breathe this space as well. Let's just start off from the get. Do you think this is the end of movie theater exclusives? I mean, I think COVID-19 and what has happened over in 2020, I know Warner will release 17 feature films in 2021 on HBO Max. We know Comcast Universal will make films available like 17 days after the exclusive. Viacom, CBS, Paramount, they've sold films to Netflix now. The list goes on and on and on. In my opinion, I think the theater exclusive is dying and not going to be a thing, but would love to just hear from your standpoint, like that old business model, kind of where you see it going and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I think certainly with the pandemic, things have shifted, right? And we saw that a lot of studios who couldn't even predict that this would have happened, have this abundance of riches when it comes to theatrical content and now forced to integrate it as part of their streaming services that they're pushing out right now. So I would say, is it going to change things forever? Quite possibly. I think that certainly there is merit to having a theatrical business. I mean, but you're also talking about a kid who also grew up watching movies in the theater and really cherishes those kind of moments. But I think that, with the shift of going on streaming services, it quite possibly be the future of everything, right? And losing those exclusives on the theatrical business is almost inevitable. But then again, things can change. We can figure out some really clever business models to see if we can, as you can see with some of the studios testing the marketplace. But, never say never. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I wonder, I kind of, compare it to, you can get a PlayStation 4 and you and I can play Call of Duty or NBA 2K all day long, but it also is fun to go to Dave & Buster's and play with the actual arcade video game. So I wonder in the future if that's kind of like, of course, like going on a date or making a special day and seeing a huge screen with a great audio experience. And of course, with VR and different things like 3D, I think they can enhance that experience. But if it's a Friday night, you don't feel like getting ready or going out, like let's queue up the $14.99 new theatrical release. It sounds like when it comes to consumer behavior, it really is what makes it easier on the consumer to access this content. And it just feels like it's going to be obviously the streaming opportunity if they choose that to go forward.
I would agree. I think it's about removing those pain points, right? So for certain users, the pain points are, gosh, I got to get dressed up. I got to drive. I got to pay $30 for snacks and drinks if I'm just having one person with me. While I could the trade-off is I could sit at the comfort of my own home and enjoy it on my television. Whereas you have individuals who are like, no, I do want that genuine experience. You have those dedicated fans who appreciate cinematography, right, and want to have the tried and true traditional experience. So just like what you're saying, there's probably going to be a blend or a hybrid of that moving forward. And I think we've already getting a glimpse of that in 2021 with Warner Brothers. Yeah, and
I think it'd be interesting to see too, like in my opinion, I would much rather see a big action thriller or Star Wars or something like that in the theaters, not so much your rom-com. So it'd be interesting to see when those two are both available in the theater and available on streaming, if people really choose to go see the rom-com or more of the, standard comedy type thing. I would love to get your thoughts on it because you were at Marvel when this happened, but we've talked about in the podcast a lot, Disney Plus crashing on day one. I think it was a brilliant potential marketing stunt that was already pre-planned because the earned media that came from that really reminded people like, oh my God, yeah, Disney Plus is a thing. Oh my God, it is available to get on now. They acted quickly, and I think within 24 hours, everything was back to normal and everybody was good. But I mean, it begs the question, like, are some of these errors that happen with stuff like that, like, good for just the earned media and the overall marketing of a product? Because I think it did well.
Right. I think in my own opinion, it was a happy accident. I don't think there's ever the intention of giving the guests or the consumers a bad experience, but it was a happy accident to see. Demand was high. And I think those are one of the moments when you look at that and you can act quickly and use that as I wouldn't say that's an intentional publicity stunt, but a bit of news to just say, hey, this was so awesome. We just appreciate everyone jumping on the platform. Unfortunately, there were technical issues, but we fixed them.
I've seen in ROI reports where executives like, we were so busy it crashed the website. That's actually a positive thing. So I think you can use that like, hey, we couldn't even imagine the type of drive we were going to get there.
Exactly.
Working at Disney, I know you wrote a really interesting op-ed at Adweek of just how you feel like they can rethink their business. And Disney now, what that umbrella oversees is crazy, from theme parks to ESPN to Disney Plus to Marvel, Star Wars. I mean, everything, it seems like they now own. But you just I would love for you to kind of speak on that, about what your thoughts were, obviously being there for 7 years, and just kind of saying, hey, just an idea here. Here's a different way Disney could think about it if they chose to.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, it wasn't a critique to the organization. I still admire the organization and everything that they are doing. I think with 2020 and everything that was happening, it gave me that time to think about, well, how can we do things differently, right? Mm-hmm. Because now the theatrical business is stalled. It's on pause, right? It's on a really strong halt.
Yeah.
And because Disney is so uniquely positioned in the marketplace because they developed all these other divisions within the company that really extends the storytelling from the films and television shows that you're used to. How can you rethink it and develop it in a way that's more consumer friendly? And I think that my premise and conceit was, what if Disney can think of their business more like an Amazon Prime? This was definitely inspired by Scott Galloway and all the things he's been talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's like, how do you consolidate all of that and present that to the consumer in one package where they could pay one price per month, one price per year, where they get access to all the great content that Disney is creating, but also at the same time, create a little bit of discounts for their strongest fans when they want to buy tickets to the theme parks or the vacations or the cruises and stuff like that. And it's more about, how do you cultivate and nurture your hardcore fan base, but at the same time, create a reoccurring revenue that's predictable year to year, right? To give you a gauge. So no longer are you guessing, are we going to make our budget or make it or not? We can at least see like, all right, maybe with a 10% margin of error, we get a sense of what we're getting every year and what we can play with.
That'd be interesting. So you're almost talking about almost a digital storefront where everything Disney offers is in one easy place, and you almost get points or stars or just gamify it in a way where you're getting rewarded, you're getting discounts if you've seen the last 5 Disney movies in a theater, or you've gone to the theme park 17 times this year. That unlocks different things. And we know people love the gamified element of it. So I think they're so big now. Even like, hey, I watched a boxing match on ESPN Plus. That also counts towards my Disney stars this week or points this week. Right. So it'd be very interesting.
Right. It's just rewarding the engaged consumer, right? And I also was looking at it in a way of like, it doesn't have to be a one size fits all package. It could be different tiers, right? So you as a consumer can choose your level of engagement with the brand. Some people just love watching the content. They love Marvel. They love Lucasfilm. They love Disney and Pixar, and they just want to stick it to that. And maybe they live in a place where they can't really take advantage of all the discounts, like going to the parks. But then for those who live in California, Disney, or elsewhere in the world where they're closer to that, and they're fanatics, they can leverage those packages and be able to just spend more money over there, right? And which company don't want to hear their fans spending more money with them?
I think when it comes to like ESPN, obviously the majority of the revenue comes from television ads and also cable subscriber fees. I think ESPN charges around $7 last time I checked per subscriber, which is I think the highest in the industry. But are you anticipating, and I think I am as well, but that flipping? I mean, obviously it's so difficult to have one business model, one revenue model that you've been tried and true for 25 years. But you've seen with what ESPN Plus and Disney Plus, they're anticipating a time where they can take that $7 subscriber under their own umbrella and not have to worry on the cable, especially with all the cord cutting, cable nevers, all those different things you're seeing with the younger generation. So those are calculated efforts that Disney's making at a top level where, it may only be 5% of our revenue today, but we're anticipating it to be 80% of our revenue tomorrow.
Right. And that's the long game and the short game, right? And knowing that you're going to have short-term losses, but you're going to get long-term wins. And I think that was the inspiration of Disney Plus, is when you start seeing the marketplace changing, you start seeing the streaming platforms. I think Bob Iger even talked about it in his book of like, I was like, he was willing to take those calculated risks. And although there's going to be short-term losses, he knows there are going to be huge wins in the long term that set the company up for success and for the next generation of fans.
Yeah, and I think I saw something on your Twitter a couple of days ago that you shared that you were almost just as amazed as I. But over the next few years, 10 Marvel series, 10 Star Wars series, 15 Disney live actions, the Disney Animation Pixar series, plus 15 all-new Disney live actions, Disney Animation, and Pixar features will be released directly on Disney Plus. I made this joke before when Disney Plus first came out. I don't know how you're a parent in the United States or maybe globally And you're forced, I mean, at this point, you're forced to own Disney Plus. Like, they've brought so much into it. Once they added the Marvel and the Star Wars, like, I mean, it's going to be difficult not to own that in your portfolio.
Yeah, I agree. And I love what they're doing right there, because now they're creating Disney Plus more of a content machine 365 days a week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? It's keeping you engaged on the platform. And you can see the example of the Marvel shows where you had WandaVision, and just several weeks later, it's going to be Winter Soldier and the Falcon. So, I mean, those kind of shows, and seeing that small gap of time difference between each, I think is genius on Disney's part.
I think the first show I ever binge from start to finish was maybe Sopranos or Breaking Bad, maybe Mad Men. But I remember catching up, like I was 4 or 5 seasons behind, and I watched it every day for 3 straight weeks, and you find yourself catching up to the TV release. But since you dealt with Netflix so much on the Marvel part of things, I'd love to get your thoughts on, I guess, the pros and cons of releasing a new show all at once versus week to week, because we've seen the cable TV model, the week to week and the anticipation, something like, you know, Game of Thrones, all that type of talk and water cooler talk that you can really build upon with your fan base and with the community. But Netflix and streaming, they were known for, let's just dump the full season and you can watch it all tonight if you would like. So it's interesting. It's kind of changed the last couple of years where all streaming services, particularly Netflix, are like, no. We're all about binge watching. But now it seems like they're experimenting with the old true method of let's do week to week.
Right. Well, I think what it is when it comes to streaming and working with innovative companies like Netflix, it's about how do we redefine the playbook, right? And when you had for years and decades, everyone doing appointment viewing with the week to week, they're like, why don't we just toss that playbook and do something different? And you know what? We're just going to offer everything immediately. And right there, that signals differentiation, right? A reason why you should be subscribing to Netflix. And this is especially during the early years, and it makes complete sense.
It's true.
And what I love about Netflix is as they progressed, they were a company that was also data driven. So they started to notice that there were certain types of shows that people love to devour immediately. Right. But there was also shows that people like to savor, right, and take their time with. And I think that was when they were starting to experiment with the release scheduling. You have other competitors that were doing that. And I think for a consumer, I think frankly, as a consumer, I just want everything available immediately, right? Because you're paying for that month to month. But when I want it immediately, it's more of I want to watch it on my own terms. Either I could be a person that wants to watch all of it now within a day or two, or I could take my time on demand whenever I want and watch it and savor it, right? I love the beauty of that. But from a business side of things, it could be a little bit different. I think it all depends. There isn't a right or wrong strategy right now when it comes to releases, but you got to be thoughtful of what you have in your hands. So, for example, when you have a television show like The Mandalorian, right, which is absolutely great, based on a franchise that everyone knows, you have the permission to do it week to week, because although some of your fans may complain a little bit, they're going to watch it regardless, right?
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead.
Sorry. After you.
So I think that when it comes like the Mandalorian example, though, I think the benefit as a company is that if it goes to week, then your marketing strategy shifts. Yes. And you're looking at the long game here now, because it's not like something that you dump once, like a film, and then it's gone. It's much more, I think, as a person who worked on TV, a little bit more challenging, because to sustain people's interest for 2 months is not easy these days. Right. But when you have a great franchise like Mandalorian, you can sustain that with great creative. And also, if you, as a person, as a marketer who probably saw the season way ahead and was able to plan out strategically which episodes you knew were going to have some twists and turns, and then amp up the marketing activity behind that during that week, it gives you a longer story and gives you more time in the social conversation, right? Stretching that out for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and I think so for more context, STN, the company I own, is a social first agency. And what hurts about some of these binge shows is you can't really have a social strategy. I mean, you can, but you don't know where anybody is in the different arc of the show. Like Ozark drops, and if you're running at Ozark, which Netflix kind of avoids having a bunch of series-based handles, I think for this reason, they don't want to spoil the Henry who hasn't seen season 3 yet when David's already seen it, but they kind of want to communicate with the David that's already binged it and seen it. So that's a difficult line to walk from a marketing standpoint. I will say I talked about this with Katie Daly. She's the VP of social at ESPN on the last podcast. So again, Disney family, but The Last Dance, The Last Dance was something that was so important, I think, emotional and mental health during the pandemic for someone like me who was a sports fan. I look forward to that every single Sunday, all the memes that happen in between the week. And if that was available all in one chunk, I probably would have watched it all one night, stayed up till 3 a.m, and then it would have been done. So from a marketing standpoint, I have to agree that you could just extend your window. You can build that community. I remember watching Breaking Bad, and I would listen to the post podcast with the writers after each show, breaking down the show and what's to come for the next show. So it does increase that window and I think create more fandom rather than the binge approach. So it's me interesting to see how streaming platforms handle that in the future.
And your Last Dance example, the beauty of it all is that you start seeing those memes and you start realizing that sometimes you're like, I can't miss out. Because now everything's being spoiled to me. And that leads to you having a sense of urgency to watch it sooner than later. Right. And
Tiger King had the same effect during quarantine because that was launched.
And so me as a marketer, I'm giddy because I'm like, okay, you're watching and you're converting and watching my stuff a lot sooner than waiting for later. And I like to see those results immediately.
And Netflix, if you think about it, when they first started, they had limited original series and it was all about just, backlogged items of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Friends or Seinfeld or what have you. So as long as they can have that weekly window and then once the season's over, then the people can go binge watch it, obviously. So it just it catches up with you in a sense. So, it's funny. Before, I never really had the conversation about this, but now I'm really going towards, make it all week to week, man. Let's extend this window from a marketing perspective. And I think just to get excited, like I said, The Last Dance was, when Saturday rolled around, Last Dance is tomorrow, I can't wait type thing. So, speaking of that, I want to go kind of off topic a little bit and look at Quibi. I'd love to get your thoughts on if you thought they ever had a chance, if there was an idea there, or were they kind of fighting an uphill battle from the start? Take COVID out of it for a second. Do you think that had an opportunity, or did they just approach that the wrong way based on your, being in the industry?
My hot take on Quibi, and I think the caveat is that it's always easier to look at hindsight and point the negatives and stuff like that. But I think what I would focus on is that I think maybe there was merit to the idea of the original idea, right? And it was a test to see if there was willingness of people wanting to watch short form content in that way. And I think that being in the pandemic where everyone was making time to watch content, it was interesting to see that it didn't translate. My hunch was when it comes to that kind of length of content, for me, I'm a storyteller, and to tell a really compelling story within 11, 12 minutes, in that form to adults, I think is a challenge and a hurdle. I think that when you look at other alternatives of content that was free, like YouTube, that fits that bill of like that 12 to 15 minute window where you can learn something that really filled that void. But I would say like Quibi, they tried their darnest. You know what I mean? They had really quality people to lead the team. They made a great effort to it. I just think that it was one of those situations where the market didn't react to it and just rejected it.
All right, Henry, here's my hot take on Quibi. I don't think I've ever said this on the podcast, but yeah, their whole point was in a Quibi, which was their kind of tagline. If you're at if you and I are at line at Starbucks and you have a 7-minute wait, let me just watch an episode or let me do what have you. Isn't that social media? Isn't that TikTok? Aren't you and I scrolling on Instagram in that 7 minutes instead of diving in? So that's where I never really got the idea of that. And then I think during the pandemic, they didn't move quick enough. I mean, they weren't available to go onto your Roku or on your TV. People wanted to digest this stuff. They didn't move quick enough. They didn't allow people to take screenshots or meme anything, which is, I think, the definition of earned media. They didn't allow people to do podcasts like Bravo does. They cease and desist. And then finally, they want to go after a Gen Z audience, and they had, some great shows like Punk'd, for instance, but that's kind of tapping into more of the millennial nostalgia. And if you really want to bring in, instead of bringing in a Reese Witherspoon, do you bring in a Charlie D'Amelio from TikTok because you're trying? So I just felt like, unfortunately, it felt like there was a couple old people in a room that thought they knew what young people liked and what they need instead of kind of actually going against that. So that's just sorry, I didn't mean to come. This is your interview, not my interview, but that's my hot take.
But I love that hot take. I think especially the first point you brought up was the thought process was people would be able to watch it when they're in line at something. But here's the thing, we're in a pandemic. People were at home.
Yes.
Right. We didn't have those moments that we typically had pre-pandemic where there was that time that we wanted to fill as we're waiting for something, the in-between moments that didn't exist anymore. We were all stuck at home.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you bring a lot of great points. I would absolutely agree that could possibly be the case as well.
And I think it's called Blackballed, but it was a documentary about Donald Sterling and the LA Clippers and that whole situation that unraveled. And I was interested. It was a good series. It was, again, 8-minute episodes, but there was like 13 episodes. But I watched the first 6 and I went to watch episode 7, like tune in next week for episodes 7 to 13. Like that's where, if you're hooked on it, I don't agree with the non-binge approach, but I think, I'm on the fence. Like I like binging, but also I don't like binging, I guess. So that's kind of a funny, interesting take. So what are your thoughts on, I've been making this joke for years now. Like, okay, it started with Netflix. Oh my God, all I have to do is pay $7.99 a month and I get everything.
Right.
Then the networks and the studios got smart. Like, wait a second, why are we just giving all this stuff to Netflix? Why don't we start our own streaming service? So I think it started with Hulu, and then it started with these different Amazon Prime. So now they were kind of competing against each other, going after rights. But the reason I bring that up is we're getting to a point now, Henry, where why don't we just bundle up all these streaming services, kind of like we just did 30 years ago with the cable, DirecTV and Time Warner Cable. Everything usually comes full circle in media in a sense, which is kind of interesting. But aren't we getting to a point now, Henry, where you have to almost subscribe to 17 of these things now? ESPN Plus, Disney Plus, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Netflix, Paramount, HBO Max. I mean, at a certain point, it's like someone's going to bundle all this up to make savings because it is more expensive. You used to cut the cable to save money, but now all those together are costing you $100 a month.
I mean, you and I are on the same wavelength in terms of our thought process of what the future is going to be for this. I think, quite frankly, you hit it right on the head when it comes down to share of wallet. Right? There's going to be. You have the consumer, and then there's all these platforms that are demanding for your wallet, and you're paying for it, and eventually you're going to hit a critical point of like, I can't afford anymore. Right? This doesn't make sense for me to subscribe to 17 different platforms,
or even having 11 different passwords. It gets frustrating just from a consumer. Right.
So I think that's where we're going to start seeing that shift. And I would actually say the shift's already started. I would give a recent example where you saw the WWE network. I think this is where I reveal my my guilty pleasure of professional wrestling.
Hey, man.
But, you look at WWE Network, and I think they were always hovering around the 1.52 million subscriber mark. And it was advantageous for them to just go to Peacock. And Peacock, has I think the last time they talked about 33 million subscribers. So you could see the potential there, because when they jumped to Peacock, the offering now is now about half the price of what it originally was.
And WWE just gets a guaranteed chunk of change. They don't have to worry about marketing. Exactly.
Bingo. And they get exposure to a wider net of a general audience, right? Which is a huge win for them. So when they come back to doing pay-per-views and live events, that's just going to reward them in a different way. And we're going to start seeing that. There's no possible way, I think, that everyone's going to survive here. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to start seeing that shift where the 800-pound gorillas, the survival of the fittest, the strongest ones with the biggest and strongest, most engaging library is going to stay strong. And for those niche streamers, they're going to have to pick and choose and align with another streaming platform.
What are your thoughts? I know Disney bundles up Hulu and ESPN Plus for some type of savings, but at a certain point, I kind of get the Disney versus ESPN, but is there any pros or cons to keeping Hulu separate? Like, why not just rope in all of Hulu's content into Disney Plus, and even you can add a couple more dollars to the subscriber fee on Disney Plus, and then you get all that content? I guess, am I not thinking about a potential pro to separate? Once you kind of own these umbrellas, FX is another one that's on Hulu now. But once you start owning all these, like the 800-pound gorilla, does it make sense to just say like, hey, we're Disney and we pretty much own everything?
I mean, that's an excellent thought. the way that I look at it is from a brand perspective, Disney has always made that promise of being family friendly content, right? And they put
That's a great
themselves
point. Yeah.
in a sweet spot. So when you look at the content on Hulu, and the content coming from Fox, it's about they need to make the decision and figure out how far we're going to really push it, right? Because now
you're saying It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia isn't family friendly. Come on, Henry.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's true.
So I think they need to figure that out first. And I think, and that's always been the biggest marketing hook, was that as a parent, as you are as a parent, if you have children, you have that comfortability. I can't even talk right now. You're just super comfortable with the knowing that whatever you put on Disney is going to be fine, right? You can walk away, and you know that your kids are going to be watching something safe. So having that peace of mind is a huge thing. So pushing that to introduce other pieces of content, something they just need to decide what they want to do from there. I did read that they were from international territories. They're introducing the idea of Disney plus Star, and Star would be the brand or that element where they introduce the vehicle that would introduce the idea of like, hey, this brand is called Star. This where it pushes different types of content for everyone else. And on the platform, we'll probably put parental controls and make sure it's safe, yada, yada, yada. I think they're trying that out and see how that's going to work and how that's going to stick. But quite frankly, it's an interesting challenge. And I think for me, when it comes to going on Hulu, it's just a couple clicks away. It's not too much of a difficult thing for me to do. I feel fine doing it. But then again, some people may feel differently.
And they have an interesting, they're allowed to, from a marketing perspective, even their Hulu has live sports campaign, much more goofier, much more silly, but also very, they do a good job, like it's saying what their differentiator is, where Disney probably wouldn't spend any money worrying about like that. So, I always wonder like when it makes sense to the conglomerate to just like, swallow up the brands or to keep them separate verticals so you can have, just different ways that you can talk to your audience, I guess, is the main question.
Yeah, I think it just depends. When you think about Netflix, they're for everyone. That's their positioning, right?
Yeah.
It's all ages.
Yeah.
And when you look at how they position their stuff on their shows on the platform, they may do Netflix animation and Netflix, original series, Netflix movie or whatever it is, but still all under Netflix because of their initial promise to the consumer, which was we're developing content for everybody.
Yep.
Doesn't matter, right? So then there isn't that delicate balance of trying to be family friendly there.
I think, with your history of global marketing for two huge brands like that, I'm just curious from your standpoint, because there's so many internal facets to those two huge brands that you had to deal with. What is one thing you think most brands get wrong or don't spend enough time thinking about when it comes to marketing their product or just engaging their consumer?
That's a very good question. The one thing that comes immediately to mind is that when you have a big brand, typically there's a lot of people you need to work with to get approval if you want to do anything, right? There's a lot of tape, but that's because everyone wants to be cautious. Everyone wants to protect the brand because it took so long to build it.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be really mindful. But the way that I look at it, sometimes brands in general have the struggle of jumping quickly on things that are trending. And I give you the example of a platform called Clubhouse. I don't know if you're on it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on it every once in a while. I like to listen there, but that platform is still very young. It's still in its beta stage. So I can totally understand a lot of brands are not quick to jump into it. I think in the next year or two, we'll see the adoption there. But I always feel like brands that are savvy, that understand, if there's a new group of people that are gravitating towards this platform, it's another avenue and another vehicle for them to speak to their consumer.
Yep.
And I think Clubhouse would be a very interesting promise given its audio only format.
Yeah, I love Clubhouse, and I think it's funny you say that because I'm client calls all the time where brands get big eyes when they see a new platform. Like, ooh, should we be on Clubhouse? I'm like,
right.
And Katie Daly in the last podcast made it a brilliant point. I never really thought about it this way, guys. Are we worried about width or depth? And what I say all the time is, guys, we haven't even figured out your Instagram strategy yet. Like, we haven't figured out these are mature platforms, so.
Right.
You haven't figured out a way to post regularly on Instagram. So let's not have 8 platforms that we're only operating at 11%. Let's have 2 or 3 that we really dive deep in. So that's always my recommendation. Like, sure, Clubhouse is great, but make sure you have the other more important platforms locked down before you spend additional time on that.
Absolutely. You actually bring up this really great point because I've done some consulting in this past year, and well, in 2020 and 2021, now that we're in 2021. Anyways, but one of the common things that I get from a lot of filmmakers, is that they're like, hey, we need to figure out our social strategy. And typically they're probably they're like barely beginning on their first feature film.
Right.
And I tell them that, you're not at that point in that life cycle for you to focus on brand. You're better spending your energy and crafting the best possible film you can. And your only marketing you need to have is really focusing on publicity. Get other outlets, other people to qualify you and your film as a great product.
Right.
And I think from then, when it comes out and debuts, as long as people are falling in love with your product emotionally connecting with it, then you can start thinking about brand.
Yes.
Right. I think a lot of them fall into the world of FOMO of like, oh my God, all these big distributors and studios are doing all the social stuff. I need to be doing it too. No. Focus on the product, and that's I think that's that's a common mistake that I've encountered several times, of people just thinking, oh, we need to do that. I'm like, no, actually you can slow it down, focus on this and do it later.
Absolutely. I want to get your take, and I want to get some rapid fire questions from you as well.
Okay.
But what brands, platform, maybe other than Disney and Marvel, do you think do a good job at creating community, giving fans what they want to see, and just kind of creating that brand loyalist, if you will? Any brands come to mind for you that you just really think do a good job of that?
There's a lot of brands that do it, but because I love the streaming world, and it's going to sound biased, but Netflix. I think Netflix has that strategy of creating content for everyone. They make data-driven decisions in terms of greenlighting projects.
True.
So obviously they see what people are leaning towards, and then they try to figure out, well, how do I create a show or a film that's going to address that trend we're starting to see, right? That customer avatar that we're looking at. And they've been really smart at doing that. I love their social approach, whereas they've developed social accounts based on taste.
Yes. Netflix is comedy. Right? It's great.
Yeah. And no, not a lot of brands have been able to replicate that or be able to even match what they've been able to do. So I think they've been doing an excellent job at listening, social listening, watching and really refining their content library of making sure they're creating content that is fully representative of their audience.
Yep. I like to talk about things outside of just media and social on this program as well, because I think it's good to always educate and create value as much as you can. And I know you're super passionate about this, and I know you've tweeted about it recently, but there's obviously, as everybody listening knows, there's been this heightened state of violence and xenophobic rhetoric towards the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, specifically in the pandemic, since everything came out with COVID. And I know you've kind of banded together with some other leaders in the Asian American community, but we'd just love to get your take on what you're doing, obviously, A, and then B, just what others should know, and just like educate some people that may not be as close to it as you are, and maybe how they can help.
Yeah, thank you. I think for that, I would definitely not take any credit on this. For me, it was more of amplifying the message here. My friend and mentor, Eric Toda, who really wrote a beautiful piece for Adweek, really stating the situation and bringing it to light in the world of marketing, was incredibly helpful. And now that I'm starting to see the raised awareness on Stop Asian Hate, I was just doing my part of just trying to amplify that message on my own social handles wherever I can. And that's what's important for me, certainly as an Asian American. And seeing those aha moments from my non-Asian friends who are saying, I didn't know this was happening. And I'm like, I completely understand. It's because the mass media is not covering it. With Asian Americans, we may be just 6-7% of the U.S. population. So of course, it's nothing to really highlight. But again, a lot of these events are happening that is really scary. And I'm not saying we're the only POC group that has experiencing this.
Right.
But there has certainly been a rise right now, and any way that I can amplify that message and drive people to donate in those great funds that are being created, like GoFundMe created a great fund for people to participate in and donate in. I feel fulfillment from that. And I think that's just really important just to make that aware, because nowadays, when you think about social, things have changed. I think we're going away from the brand era where it's one directional. And because of 2020, you're starting to see brands shift to that community focus, showing compassion and having that two-way conversation.
Yeah.
So now you're seeing a lot of brands who are standing up, and I'm delighted to see it personally, to show that and to elevate that it's wrong to be racist, right? It's not okay. And that's one of those universal things that regardless if you're the left or the right or whatever political followings you have, there is that tried and true element here of like racism is bad.
Yeah.
Regardless.
And I think too, it's just another education of words matter. And when the leader of the United States decides to call COVID-19 the Chinese virus, I think what people have to understand is, unfortunately, there are some people that aren't too smart that take that and run with it and choose to use that for hate. And it's just, that's why it's so important, I think, for our leaders, and even going down to the business level, like at Disney or Marvel, here at STN, like what you say as a leader really matters, because people just like latch on to words and they start making their own assumptions. And we've just seen all the elderly abuse. And I think, once, that was a big spike. Once that was said and that became part of the rhetoric, especially on social as well,
right.
Some very unfortunate bad humans took that and said, now I can treat people this way, which is just pretty sad.
And the way I look at it is, media shapes perception for a lot of people, right? And this is why it was so important for these brands to stand up, because that's probably one of the very few avenues that these people who don't know what's going on is finally discovering and learning.
Right.
And I think, some people go, well, why are brands doing this? It's because of that. Media shapes perception, unfortunately. For us who are higher thinkers, we know better. But for, the general audience who just need to, that is not as engaged as others. And I'm not saying that was wrong or not. I'm just saying they may not be engaged and you just didn't know.
Absolutely. So I will say that the hope I have, and the thing I've been talking about on this podcast and with friends and coworkers and things like that, is it does seem, and I'm sure you've noticed it too, like there's this, kind of 2020 vision, but there's this clarity now, I think, of, we, especially the newer generation, millennials, Gen Z, like this is not okay. We don't need to be treating people this way. And I don't think, in my lifetime, as far as Black Lives Matter and this recent movement for this anti-Asian violence, things like that, the Fortune 500 brands that are coming out and saying what they're saying, you can say all day long it's a PR ploy or whatever, but it is healthy. And I don't think it's ever been done before where this many brands have stepped up and say, we don't agree. This is our consumer. This is our employee. This is terrible. And we stand against that, which I think is healthy.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree with that.
All right. So we have some rapid fire questions and then we'll get you out of here. We promise. In your history as a marketer, what's the one social or marketing tool that you just can't live without?
Oh my goodness. Everything's a tool for me. I can't live without anything. I think all the social platforms are incredibly important. I can't pick one. It's like you're picking your favorite children. I think it just depends on what you align with. I'm for one an Instagram geek. I'm very active on. That's the most active platform I am. I can't do a TikTok. Don't have the energy or the time to do dance moves. I'm also, if you go to
TikTok, the thing is with TikTok, if you log on, you're going to be scrolling for 45 minutes. That algorithm is insane. So, yeah.
Right. But that. I think another tool that I just love personally, just for myself, and it's not for a marketing thing, but I love Calendly.
Yes.
Is a great tool. And I will tell you why, which is it removes a lot of friction points, right? Especially when it comes to networking. And on LinkedIn, you do the cold message, people are trying to connect with others, and sometimes you got to wait a few days. And, that.
How about Thursday? How about Tuesday? How about Monday? What about 8 a.m.?
Right.
So much wasted time.
Exactly. So one of the things I did in 2020 was, with spring, we're in the pandemic, and I started to notice that for the younger folks, they didn't know how to deal with it, right? Because it's quite for them a traumatic event.
Right.
So I just posted my Calendly link on LinkedIn and said, hey,
Awesome.
any students of color, you can have one-on-one time
amazing.
with me, 30 minutes.
Good for you.
And we can talk about, what you want to do in college, or if you already graduated, what you can do as you're looking for a new job, but I'm here for you. Right. And giving that. And surprisingly, I got an overwhelming response of people who took me up on that offer. And I was lucky enough to mentor about like 80 students just in 2020 alone. And I posted this in the springtime. So
that's awesome.
It was a grateful thing to do. And this may not be marketing, but it just shows the power of using technology and using these social platforms for good.
Yeah. And to your point, you never would have done that, not because you didn't want to, but like, I'm not scheduling 80 email threads back and forth. So just like that piece of technology allowed you to kind of give back to the community, which is awesome. In our industry, FOMO is a major thing. We talked about it earlier. Things move so freaking quick and we could barely keep up with it. But what's the one thing you would recommend that all marketers either read on a daily basis? I know you do a lot of work with Adweek, but either read, follow, newsletter, anything that is like your go-to that you think all marketers should pay attention to?
Adweek's a great resource to use of what's going on and what's trending in the world of marketing. Personally, for me, my go-to source of information, believe it or not, is Reddit.
Yep.
I think Reddit has taught me so much.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great gems in there, but yeah, Reddit's a great platform just to learn. And I think if anything, it was one of the proven social communities on the internet where you can gain a lot of value from other than Clubhouse.
Yep. What inspires you? How do you stay on the cutting edge and continue wanting to push the envelope?
Wow, that's a really good question. I'm going to be very frank in terms of my inspiration and maybe a little bit different from others, but I come from a refugee family. My parents were refugees who came to the United States. So growing up in a humble immigrant family, and my parents had me at 18 and 23 years old. So kids raising babies.
Yeah.
And, my father dedicated his life at 23 in raising me and later on my younger brother. So for me, my motivation is my family, right? Of really trying to do fantastic things so I can show to them that, all the energy, all the sacrifice, everything they did was not wasted.
Right.
And actually in 2020, I went through an exercise of trying to redefine what my purpose and mission in life is. And I finally realized that because of my background, because of my personal journey of what I went through, if I can continue to do awesome things, and if I'm and if I can be a trailblazer for the next generation and build that bridge for future Asian American marketers to follow my path,
right,
that brings me complete fulfillment, and it's coming from the best of intentions. I really want to help minorities and Asian Americans to move forward and do things that we typically don't see them do.
Yeah, I love that. My final question for you is, what are you most excited about? We talked so much about streaming and the future. I mean, obviously, we can go down a whole rabbit hole of programmatic advertising and
Sure.
like all that.
Sure.
But what is the one thing that you're just super excited about as we go forward? What I've been saying is, because of COVID, honestly, I think the digital revolution has been fast forwarded 5 years into the future. So
yes,
things are moving quicker than probably you and I anticipated, just 18 short months ago. But yeah, what are you most excited about as we move forward?
There's tons. I think one that I would talk about right now that is most intriguing. I don't want to say most exciting, but most intriguing to me is digital avatars as influencers. And yeah,
it's kind of scary, but kind of cool. I agree.
It's kind of cool, It's very interesting, but also not too far from different than Mr. Clean being an avatar for cleaning products.
True.
You know what I mean? It's just brought into the social plane, and it's a little bit different. And I think it's interesting to see that people are gravitating towards them. Yeah. For example, there's a digital avatar influencer called Michaela, and on Instagram, she has 3 million followers.
Yep.
3 million followers, and that's a gargantuan number. And to see that a digital entity can influence people it's scary and exciting at the
Yeah,
same time. And I'm
yeah.
very curious to see how that's going to progress. What I'm hoping is it's not going to end like a Black Mirror episode,
Right,
right?
right.
Where we get a digital avatar as president. But what I'm
Who
excited
knows?
about as a marketer is, let's say we talked about influencer marketing in general in the marketing world, and these digital avatar beings, now you're going to be able to partner up with influencers and not pay that heavy cost, right, to a real life person. Because in theory, if the engagement is equal or even more than a real life person, as a marketer, why wouldn't I use this digital avatar, right, to help? And on top of that, they're probably much more flexible when it comes to the creative versus a real life influencer who is trying to protect their own brand and protect their own personal voice. So I completely get both sides.
Yep.
But for me as a marketer, I'm very intrigued of where this is going to go and see how far digital avatars are going to permeate within pop culture.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to this, but I'll ask you. At Marvel, did you guys start building out all different character social media accounts? And because I'm sure like the possibility is endless there as well, by having the @handles for every single character in the Marvel universe.
Interesting. I wouldn't even know how to address that question, just because I don't think we really dived that deep when I was there.
All right, it's my free consulting. We can give it to him later. All right, so lastly, if you could recommend anybody in your network that you think would provide value or be a good next guest here on the podcast, anybody come to mind? Any person that you think would be good to nominate next on the show?
Ooh, let me think. I got a couple people in mind. I think one of my friends, Jeremy Schumann at Instagram, is killing it, and he did some pretty interesting things. I think Eric Toda, obviously the one who talked about who's head of social at Facebook, who's been a strong voice for Stop Asian Hate, is another great individual that I admire deeply, but also he knows this game in and out and probably can speak much more articulately than myself.
Well, cool, man. We'll follow up via email and see if we can get some intros there. It'd be great to talk to Jeremy and Eric. But, well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate not only, your expertise and everything you did at Disney and Marvel, but also giving back to your community and also just taking time to nurture those young people coming up. That's awesome. So thanks so much, man. It was great meeting you.
Likewise. Thank you, David.
All right, Henry. Thanks.
Bye.
All right. All right, there he was, Henry Ong. Appreciate it so much. Good stuff, Will, for landing that. I think our good bud John Paik, the former brand marketer over at Nike, introduced us to Henry. So it was awesome to hear his take.
I think his background was Tony Stark's house. I forgot to ask him about that while he was live, but I think he was at the Marvel compound there.
Oh, wow. Okay, there you go. He made a great point, too. I never really thought about it. It's like, why not Disney just bring in Hulu and just like offer everything under one umbrella like Netflix does? And he made a great point there I didn't really think about. Is Disney, is that family-friendly content? Hulu can bring in the FX of the world, the It's Always Sunnies, the the murder mysteries, all those things that may not be family-friendly, which is interesting. I guess on Disney Plus, you could just have a tab where, kid-friendly or what have you. But, branding is important. And does Disney want to spend their time focusing on Star Wars and Marvel, or they want to focus on the fact that Hulu has live sports? So you start to get why brands choose to either stay bifurcated or let's come all together.
I thought the point that you both made about the gamification potentially of Disney, where
I
you
love
could
that.
earn points. That was one of the smarter things. I can't believe that hasn't been done yet.
Super smart.
World.
And again, I don't know if he was going down that road, but it's like, wait a second. If Will Kelly has been to Disneyland 3 times and he's also a Disney Plus subscriber, but he's also went to the theater to watch Star Wars, that should put you in a rankings or give you more points or give you 15% off Disney merchandise where you could buy a t-shirt or buy a bobblehead or whatever it may be. So super smart, and I would not be surprised. I think Disney is looking for different revenue streams as cable. Think about how much money they make in cable subscriber fees with not only ESPN, but the Disney Channel and now FX and all these different channels that they own under their umbrella. So going to be interesting to see, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years, how they restructure their business to be still maintain that mammoth that is Disney. Visionary company, man. Over 100 years old. Walt knew what he was doing. Gotta say that. All right, so as we always do, can we thank Dave Furker just in spirit?
Yeah.
I mean, he's working on the Big East tournament today, So props to Will Kelly for setting up the cameras and the equipment and all the tech work. Thank you to producer Will as well. We always ask you, if you don't mind, subscribing to iTunes, rating us 5 stars. We're also on YouTube and Spotify. So check us out, whatever floats your boat there. We have a lot of, Will, real quick, we have, I guess, care to share any future guests that are locked in here to get the listeners nice and excited for future Boss episodes?
Yeah, I can. We have some people.
Spike Lee, Ice-T, what do we got here?
We have some people potentially in the PGA, in the sports world. I think at Coke on the branding side. What I'm really excited about, Alec Palmer at Momentum, who heads up Trevor Bauer's athlete marketing agency.
Nice.
So a little bit of everything coming up over the next couple months here.
All right. So thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate it. This has been yet another edition of the Business of Social Podcast. My name is David Brickley, and it's been powered by STN Digital.